Have I got a rare find? I found this one on a ride-by. I spent a number of years working on a program doing tree assessments, assessing tree populations and doing a lot of drive-by work. And so my keen eye caught this tree. What we have here is a shear crack, a crack running from ground level, approximately 2 meters up the stem. The crack runs straight through the tree. This is proven by the daylight that we can see through the main trunk. The tree is made up by two major trunks, codominant stems. Interestingly, the crack has propagated from ground level and has stayed within the bodies of one of the trunks. It hasn't propagated into the fork. Had it done so, the tree would have completely failed. As I pan around, you can see daylight through the crack. The tree is a field pasture specimen with an unbroken crown, bar the crack. In fact, the shear crack veterinizes this tree. Shear cracks in trees were first described, to my knowledge, by arboricultural scientists Dr. Alex Shargo in his book Modern Arboriculture, Professor Klaus Mattock in his book Body Language of Trees, and Dr. David Lonsdale in his book Principles of Tree Hazard Assessment and Management. I also cite Tree Risk Assessment by Matheny and Clark. These works have gone a long way to underpin modern arboricultural thinking. Though it must be stated that the most modern arboricultural thinking is taking the term defect out of our narrative. We are using the term feature instead. This is based on the ability of the tree to self-optimize. This tree is one of the ribbon gums from the east coast, quite possibly manna gum, Eucalyptus viminalis, from South Australia. Remember, field pasture trees are trees which have grown in the open, outside of light competition with other trees. To give perspective, we have another tree of the same species in the foreground. At the margins of the crack is a lesion. This lesion runs from the ground level up the tree. Difficult for me to ascertain how far the lesion went because of the ribbons of bark. It's quite possible that the lesion was caused by a lightning strike. Regardless of the cause of the lesion, this most certainly had weakened the stem and helped set up the parameters for the crack propagation to occur. Shear cracks like this are actually quite rare. Mattock describes shear crack formation occurring as a result of tensile and compressive loads crossing over between roots and the centre of the tree, a plane that he calls the shear bomb site. This I cover in a course that I prepared based on the body language of trees. Moving around the tree, we can see evidence of good root to trunk buttressing and trunk to lower limb buttressing as well. The tree has got actually a very good footprint in relation to taper and Mother Earth. Moving further around the tree, we can see daylight at the point that the crack has been arrested by the tree. We can see daylight through the crack which has been arrested by the bridge of tissue between the two codominant stems. Left to their own devices, shear cracks in trees like this really spell the end of the journey for the tree, although I have seen trees stand with similar cracks for a number of years before they fail. Though the fact is, we humans rarely test the parameters for tree retention. Trees which have been veterinized in this kind of way can be saved. Hardwood trees like this respond very well to being drilled and bolted, with bolts drawing such cracks together and holding them for many years. With fencing from the tree's trunk to a metre or two beyond the drip line, that coupled with a volume reduction, coupled with the establishment of a nutrient bed and plant system, would negate risk down to a zero risk of harm. Truly, we human beings have but barely begun the journey of arboriculture. So in closing on this Treecast, I thought I'd talk a little bit about how trees are successful with preventing crack formation, such as the crack that has occurred in this tree. When you consider the structure of trees made up of multiple growth increments all laid on top of each other, there's the capacity for cracks to form around the increments. These are known as ring shakes or ring cracks. You can also get cracks running straight through the wood longitudinally, such as this shear crack, and these cracks travel along the wood rays. Following are a number of slides taken from a few of my presentations. My presentations cover a reasonable segment on the science of trees. This is from a practicing arboriculturist viewpoint, but will serve the land custodian well as an introduction to the science of arboriculture. As well as being stacked incrementally, tree cells are stacked end over end. Regarding tree failure, we tend to get through the grain failure, such as delamination, and across the grain failure, which usually occurs from storm events, as well as from fungi which target the cellulose in wood. The science that I have integrated and that I share in the course of my journey centres around the work of Professor Klaus Maddock, Dr. Alex Shargo, Dr. David Lonsdale, Dr. Elaine Ingham, and Professor Roland Enos. So coming back to the success story on trees and how they prevent crack propagation. Well, trees actually exert growth stresses over their own bodies. This is comparative to we humans using weight belts and exerting pressure against a back brace to hold our back strong. Trees exert pressure along their wood vessels against the wood rays and against their growth increments. Trees literally bind themselves together. This is why we see so few failures when we look at tree populations. It takes a significant storm event, such as I covered in one of my recent tree casts, looking at wood embrittlement failures. It takes great stress, be it drought stress or development stress, the stresses that go with soil compaction. It takes such stresses to compromise the tree system to the point that it fails. Considering the biological desertification that we humans make, it's a testament to nature that there aren't more tree failures. Ask yourself following the next storm event, how many trees do you look at that succeeded and stood up to the storm, and how many did you look at which failed? We humans need to learn to take ourselves away from the media-led focus which loves high drama, and focus on the successes over the failures. In truth, it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge a second crack that I have seen in the body of this tree towards the end of doing this appraisal. Plus, had I been employed to give a perspective on this tree, it would have been hard not to condemn it in light of the land use. Though I'm certainly very grateful to have been able to make an educational story out of this one.
Do I love being a tree man.